بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. For those who gave the greetings before me, I reply wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I praise Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. I thank Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. I ask Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala to send the countless blessings and salutations on Sayyiduna Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his pure family, his honorable companions, and all of those who follow them in excellence until the day of judgment. I ask Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala to grant us the sincere intention. And I want us always to remember to start with the sincere intention. And I want to read a line from this book for those of you who are Arabic readers and love reading Arabic books. This is called Safwatul Zubat. It is written by the great scholar Ahmad ibn Hussein ibn Ali ibn Arsalan Ar-Ramli radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. It is a famous poem in Aqidah, Shafi'i fiqh, and Tasawwuf. Unfortunately, it's not translated into English, but it is a book that the great scholars of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, they all use this poem as a constant reminder of the rules of the religion, and they memorized it. So those who have a high aspiration for acquiring the knowledge, this book is a very important poem that you should have and you should memorize. But there is a line here, several lines, but this 4 lines of his poem that I want you to concentrate on related to intention. The author, rahimahullah, he said, فَصَحَّهِ النِّيَّةَ قَبْلَ الْعَمَلِ وَأْتِي بِهَا مَقْرُونَةً بِالْأَوَّلِ وَإِن تُدِمْ حَتَّى بَلَغْتَ الْآخِرَةِ خُسْتَ الثَّوَابَ كَامِلًا فِي الْآخِرَةِ. And it means correct your intention before the deed. Before you start, correct your intention. Make sure you intend to draw close to Allah, to seek the reward of Allah, to seek the pleasure of Allah, to seek Allahu tabaraka wa ta'ala. And he said, have that intention at the beginning of the deed, when you start the deed. And if you can let it last throughout the deed, to the end of the deed, you'll get the complete reward for that deed in the hereafter. So, correct your intention now. And before you come to class, you should correct your intention. And when we start, make sure that intention is present. And if we can make that intention last throughout from the beginning of the time we start to the end, we will get the complete reward for our effort in this lesson in the hereafter. So it's a reminder for us. And our deeds will not be accepted except with the pure intention. As the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. The deeds are by their intentions, and every person will get that which he intended. And I remind you of a statement of Imam Al-Haddad. I'll put it in here. Allah. Put that up. Inshallah. I'm going to put it in English too. I want you all to keep this saying of Imam Al-Haddad. He said, Jahid to Shahid. Imam Abdullah bin Alawi Al-Haddad, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he said that in his diwan. Those two words, they're very strong. Jahid to Shahid. Struggle, make an effort, make a strong effort, which is like struggling, toiling towards something, to Shahid, and you will witness the beneficial result of that thing. Through al-mujahada comes al-mushahada. Through intense struggle and diligent effort along the path to Allah, you will witness Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all of his gifts towards you. So keep that in mind. And when you're in these sessions, remember we are doing mujahada, we are struggling. Sometimes it's the struggle with the outward enemies. Sometimes it's the struggle with the world. Sometimes it's the struggle with the creation. Sometimes it's the struggle with shaitan. And most of the time it's the struggle with our own selves. As Sayyidina Imam Al-Ghazali, he said, when we're doing this struggle, we have obstacles. And among those things are the creation, the dunya, shaitan, our nafs. These are all struggles. So, jahid to shahid, struggle you will witness. So, we were on the section of doctrine for Imam Al-Haddad radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and we're going to continue. For those in the English book, we're on page 40 or 41. 40. We're on page 40 of the text of Sayyidina Imam Al-Haddad, and we'll go back to the statement of Imam Al-Haddad when he started by saying, وَهِيَ بِحَمْدِ اللَّهِ عَقِيدَتُنَا وَعَقِيدَةُ إِخْوَانِنَا مِنَ السَّادَةِ الْمَعْرُوفِينَ الْحُسَيْنِيِّينَ الْمَعْرُوفِينَ بِآلْ أَبِي عَلَوِي وَعَقِيدَةُ أَسْلَافِنَا. Now, go ahead.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Yeah. Try it again. Is it still echoing? Maybe I'll mute them.
Not muted. Bismillahir Rahmanir
Excuse
Rahim.
me. Go.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Kalal ma'alif rahimahullah. It is, may Allah be praised, our doctrine and that of our Husseini brothers, known as the family of Abu Alawi, and of our predecessors from the time of the Messenger of Allah, may blessings and peace be upon him, down to the present day. When the Imam, the immigrant to Allah, the ancestor of the said Sayyids, my Lord Ahmed bin Isa bin Muhammad bin Ali ibn Ja'far al-Sadiq, may God be pleased with them all, saw how innovation tide appeared, passions multiplied, and opinions diverged in Iraq, he immigrated from it and traveled the earth until he reached the land of Hadramaut, where he stayed until his death. And
we mentioned that Imam Al-Haddad explained that the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, I want you to put it in three things so this will be easier for you. The belief in Al-Islam, Al-Aqidatul Islamiyya, the Islamic creed, is Al-Aqidatu Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, is the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah is represented by the creed of Al-Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, which is known as the creed of the Ash'ariyya, right? All of those are different names for one and the same thing. The creed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in the Quran and that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam conveyed in his sunnah, and that the companions related from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and the followers related from the companions, and the followers of the followers related from the followers, and the succeeding generation after them related from them, to it reach those two great Imams, Al-Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari wa Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, and the likes of Imam Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi rahimahullah ta'ala. All of that and its way it reached to us is the Aqidah of Islam, which we call the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, and the methodology of conveying the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah was codified and systematized and organized by the great Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari and all the scholars who followed him, among the majority of the Ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were on the methodology of Imam al-Ash'ari. That's why they were called Ash'arian Creed. And among those were the predecessors or the ancestors of the great Imam Abdullah ibn Alawi al-Haddad, like Sayyidina Ahmed bin Isa al-Muhajir radiyallahu anhu, who lived during the time of Imam al-Ash'ari and Imam al-Maturidi, but he moved his family from Iraq away from the innovations and fitna, and they settled in Hadramaut, and they spread the Aqidah of Ahl-Sunnah, the Aqidah of Imam al-Ash'ari, as he explained and organized the creed of Ahl-Sunnah, all the way down to it reached us today from the teachers of As-Sada al-Ba'alawi. Now,
and Allah blessed his descendants, a great many of whom became renowned for their knowledge, worship, sainthood, and gnosis.
Here, Imam Al-Haddad talks about the descendants of As-Sada al-Ba'alawi, who were the descendants of Alawi ibn Ubaidullah ibn Ahmed bin Isa al-Muhajir radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, who were all Husayniyun. They were from this lineage of Imam al-Hussein radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the son of Sayyidina Ali and Fatima radiyallahu ta'ala anha. Imam Al-Haddad mentioned that those descendants, they were blessed by Allah. And part of that blessing from Allah was the dua of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Oh Allah, bless our Sham and our Yemen." Our Sham and our Yemen. Sham is the areas of Palestine, Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria. And Yemen, from among the people of Yemen, and they said, the Prophet said that faith is Yemeni, and among those from the people of Yemen were Asada al-Ba'alawi. So Imam Al-Haddad, he said many of them were blessed. And part of that blessing was the blessing of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the dua of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said they became famous. And a great number of them were famous for al-ilm, knowledge of the religion. They learned, they acquired the knowledge in all those sciences we talk about. Among Asada al-Ba'alawi, you have fuqaha, you have muhaddithun, you have hufaz, you have lughawiyun, nahwiyun, usuliyun, mutakallimun. You have all these various types of scholars in the science of fiqh, in the science of aqidah, in the science of tasawwuf, in the science of Arabic language, in the science of grammar, in the science of usul al-fiqh, in the science of the Quran. Among Asad al-Alawi, you have many, many great scholars from the family of the Prophet ﷺ and all those sciences. So they were famous for knowledge. Not only they were famous for knowledge, they were famous for al-ibadah. They practiced the knowledge. It wasn't just that these people learned, but they actually implemented what they learned. And to give you just an example of their astonishing acts of ibadah, and I say astonishing because sometimes you would not believe it, some of the things that they do. Among them was Al-Imam Abdurrahman As-Saqaf radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that it was his habit in the beginning of his spiritual wayfaring that he would complete the Quran 4 times a day. 4 times a day. And by the end of his life, he was completing the Quran 8 times a day. 4 in the daytime and 4 in the evening. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And this was like normal among them, those who were diligent in learning the knowledge. Imam Al-Haddad himself, he used to pray as a child every day 200 rakah. And he would go to the various Masjid in Tareem and pray 2 rakah in them as a child. These people were among the amazing people of ibadah in this ummah. And not only they were known for ibadah, because of their knowledge and their worship, they were famous for al-wilayah. They were famous for being among the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they practiced what they learned and they implemented the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, my servant will not draw closer to me with anything more beloved to me than that which I've made obligatory on him, that which I've made obligatory upon him. And then he will continue to draw closer to me in status by doing the optional deeds until I love him. And when Allah loves someone, he makes him a wali. He becomes a righteous servant of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So they were famous with wilayah and al-ma'rifah, which is once one knows about Allah, the ultimate goal of one is to have ma'rifatullah. As Imam An-Nawawi said, that is the first thing we are trying to strive for, is ma'rifatullah, to know Allah. But in this term, we mean in the sense of a closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a realization of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala that impacts the whole of one's life. As I told you before, one of the things that I asked Sayyidi Sheikh Samir Hafidhullah about was, what do you want after acquiring all this knowledge and being such a great scholar? He said, ma'rifatullah, to have divine realization of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So they had these aspects, and we should take an indication from what Imam Al-Haddad is saying, that were the descendants of Alawi ibn Ubaidullah ibn Ahmad ibn Isa al-Muhajir, those descendants of Asada al-Ba'alawi, they were people of al-ilm, they were people of al-ibadah, they were people of al-wilayah, and people of ma'rifah. So we should put those 3 things. Let me put them, inshallah, quickly. 3 things we want, 4 things we want to combine. Ilm, ibadah, wilaya, and ma'rifah. I'm sorry, I'm not the best typer in the world. So, al-ilm, knowledge. Al-ibadah, worship, which is the actual practice of that knowledge. Al-wilaya, the fruit of practicing your knowledge, which is a state of piety with Allah. And ma'rifah, after you reach the stage of wilaya and you striving and struggling on that path, you get to realization of Allah. So in everything we do, we notice these steps. And that's what Imam Al-Haddad highlighted about As-Sada Alawi. They were people of ilm, they were people of ibadah, they were people of wilaya, and they were people of ma'rifah. And he said many of them, not one or two, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them reached the level of ma'rifah and wilaya through their ilm and their ibadah. Now, go ahead.
Through the barakah of this trustworthy Imam, who fled from sedition to protect his religion, they remained safe from the innovations and the following of misguiding passions into which certain other factions of the prophetic house fell. May Allah reward him on our behalf with the best reward he has ever granted a father on behalf of his children. May he raise his degree along with his noble forefathers in the highest heaven, Illiyun, and give us to join them in goodness and safety, having neither changed our religion nor fallen into temptation. He is the most merciful. The Maturidis
Amin. Here, there is another thing that Imam Haddad gives us the indication. Because of Sayyidina Imam Ahmad bin Isa al-Muhajir, taking those 70 people among his family and his companions and moving them away from the place of fitna and selling them in Hadramaut. And the result that came from that those people became knowledgeable people, people that worshiped Allah a lot, people that reached the status of wilaya or piety, and those who had realization, he never forgot his forefathers and he made dua for them. Oh, Allah bless Imam Al-Muhajir. And for us, we include in that dua that we feel the same way, because it is among the routes of this knowledge that reached us, is because of his effort that he did in the year 317. 317, he left Iraq to move to Hadramaut. And here we are in the year 1441, over 1100 years later, and we're benefiting and learning from his effort. And from that, it should be an indication for us what we do now by teaching our children, by teaching us the correct creed, learning the correct methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, and we convey that to our children. Maybe 1,000 years from now, if Allah allows the world to last that long, that our children will be making dua for us and asking Allah to reward us with the best reward that Allah has ever given a parent on behalf of their children. And then Imam Al-Haddad indicates something too. May Allah raise his rank in the rank of his noble descendants, and join us with them in goodness and well-being, having not changed our deen or being tempted by fitna in the belief. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is Arhamur Rahimin. He is the most merciful of those who show mercy. Now, go ahead.
The Maturidis are the same as the Asharis in the above regard.
Here, mark this section where Imam Al-Haddad, he talked about, even though he's Ash'ari in his methodology, he said that Al-Maturidiyya are like the Ash'ariyya in everything that we mentioned before, meaning that this methodology of Ahl Sunnah has two ways of expressing it, of explaining it. That way, of Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari and that way of Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. Their creed is the same. The difference between the Ash'ari and the Maturidiyya is terminology, the way they explain in certain cases. Not in everything. In those cases can be enumerated to around 16 different ways of expressing certain aspects of the Islamic creed. But the end result, the meaning of what the Ash'ari and the Maturidi conveyed is one. And it is the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And there is no difference of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah in the foundations of the creed. As for the details of how to express certain aspects, you'll find in the methodology of the Ash'ari in the Maturidiyya a difference, which one day we'll discuss, inshallah. But whenever you say Ash'ari, the Maturidi are included. Whenever you say Maturidi, the Ash'ari are included. So that's why you would find the later scholars like the great Imam At-Taftazani radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he explained Al-Aqaid al-Nasafiyya, the creed of Imam al-Nasafi, you will find a mixture between Ash'ari opinions and Maturidi opinions because they were considered as one Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And the great Imam Muhammad Murtada al-Zabidi, who died in the year 1205 after Hijrah, and he was known as the seal of the Arabic linguist, and he was among the great scholars of Hadith at the end of the 12th century, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. When he opens his explanation, Ithaf Sadat al-Muttaqeen on Ihya Ulumuddin, his explanation of the Ihya of Imam al-Ghazali, he says that those two, Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari and Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, they are Imama Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. They are the two Imams of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And when he talks about the creed, he lists the scholars of the Ash'ari who were famous and the scholars of the Maturidiyya who were famous. And he, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, conveyed that this is the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Now,
each believer must protect his faith by learning the creed of one of the Imams who are incontestably worthy of respect and well-grounded in knowledge. And I could see none clearer, more comprehensive, and free from suspect and misleading things than that of the Imam Al-Ghazali, may Allah be pleased with him. This is to be found in the first chapter of the volume of the Foundations of Beliefs in the Iyah. Should you wish for more, then look into the Jerusalem Epistle, Al-Risalat al-Qudsiyya, in the third chapter of the same book.
So Imam Al-Haddad mentions that everyone who wants to correct his aqidah, he wants to have the sound creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, the creed of Islam, the creed that was conveyed by Imam Al-Ash'ari, Imam Al-Maturidi, and the scholars who came after them, they should memorize, he mentioned, right? بِهِفْظِ عَقِيدَةِ مِنْ عَقَائِدِ الْأَئِمَّةِ الْمُجْمَعًا عَلَى جَلَالَتِهِمْ, right? To memorize a creed among the creeds of the great Imams who there's consensus among the scholars on their illustrious attributes and their soundness in Islamic knowledge. And he said, I can think of no one more deserving of that than the great Imam, Hujjatul Islam, Abu Hamid, Muhammad ibn Muhammad al-Ghazali, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who died in the year 505 after Hijrah. And you will notice that there, after every generation, the scholars of Islam, they are connected. So as he talked about in the 4th century, those great Imams, as he mentioned, Imam Al-Ash'ari and Imam Al-Maturidi and Imam Ahmed bin Isa Al-Muhajir, who were in the 4th century. And then there is only 2 ranks or 2 chains before them, back to the down to the great Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And they were all in different places. So you should think about that. Imam al-Maturidi, he was in the area of Russia. Imam al-Ash'ari was in Iraq. Imam Al-Tahawi was in Egypt. Imam Ahmed bin Isa settled in Hadramaut. Imam Al-Ghazali was in Iran. Yet all of them, there was no internet, there was no internet, there was no airplanes, yet all of them explained and wrote the same creed of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. You must ask yourself, how did they do that? And that was by the continuous, unbroken chain of narration, which was preserved from deviation in the creed. And that's why no matter where they were at in the then known world, the belief of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah was historically the same and globally the same from the majority of this ummah. Now, go ahead.
Do not delve too deeply into theology, kalam, and do not discuss it much with the aim of truly acquiring knowledge, marifa, for it cannot be obtained through that science. If you want to acquire truly this knowledge, you must travel its path, which is to adhere to taqwa outwardly and inwardly, meditate on the verses and hadiths, reflect on the realm of the heaven and the earth with the aim of drawing a lesson, refine the soul's attributes, reduce its densities through discipline, polish the mirror of the heart by continuous remembrance, thicker, and reflection, thicker, and by shunning everything that might distract you from devoting yourself entirely to this affair.
So here, Imam Al-Haddad, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he mentions a warning about going into the details of Ilm al-Kalam. Ilm al-Kalam here is the science of theology. Let me put it. Ilm al-Kalam is the science of theology. What is Ilm al-Kalam? Ilm al-Kalam is to go into deep details about the science of the belief in a way that would remove doubts when there are reasons that cause them. So if there is no reason to go into the details of explaining the Islamic creed, sufficient is the basic creed that everyone needs to know. What attributes are obligatory to Allah, what are permissible to attribute to, what is permissible to attribute to Allah, and what is impossible. What is obligatory to believe about the prophets and attribute to them, what is permissible and what is impossible. And this is sufficient for someone who is not confronted with innovative creed. So there is no need to go into the science of al-kalam. And this was the position of Imam Al-Haddad. However, if one is confronted with things that put doubt in one's belief, then it is obligatory to learn as much of al-kalam that is necessary to remove it. So a lot of people, they say, I don't want to go into the details of aqidah. And they would think that, so studying Ilm al-Kalam is a bad thing. But if you're confronted with an issue that you don't know your belief correctly, then it's obligatory for you to learn that and much till you remove it. So for instance, many of the people in America, because of the advent of deviant creeds, some of them don't realize that Allah exists without a place. You got Muslims who claim to be Muslims and new people who come to Islam, and they're taught that Allah is in heaven upon his throne, or rose above the throne, or sitting in the throne, and that Allah has hands and feet and eyes and moves and rests, and all of these things which by consensus are rejected in Islam. So some deviant people with deviant creeds are telling them that, and books are being published in that. So for those people, it's obligatory to learn enough of the knowledge of belief and the science of al-kalam to remove those innovated creeds from one's heart. That's an obligation, because you cannot be a Muslim and not know what to believe. So you cannot have, maybe Allah is like this, maybe Allah is like that. It's all just the same stuff. No, it's not. One is Iman and one is innovation, and even to the level of disbelief, to kufr. So you have to learn enough to remove that. Once you learn that, then that's all you need of the science of usul al-din or ilm al-aqidah or ilm al-tawheed or ilm al-kalam. Imam Abu Hanifa, he was questioned about this, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Imam Abu Hanifa, he died in the year 150 after 150 after Hijrah, AH. And it was said to him, because Imam Abu Hanifa, to show you the strength of Sayyidina Imam Abu Hanifa, that he wrote a lot in the science of Aqidah, in Ilm al-Kalam. In fact, we know Imam Abu Hanifa as his title Al-Imam Al-A'zam, the greatest Imam. And he was known as the founder of the Hanafi madhab. But the books of Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu ta'ala anhu are not in fiqh. They're in Aqidah. They're in the belief. They're in belief. They're in Aqidah. And Ilm al-Kalam. To the extent, Imam Abu Hanifa, he was from Kufa. And between Kufa and Basra, there is a 4-day journey. And in Basra, there was some deviant factions who claimed to promote Islam. Imam Abu Hanifa traveled from Al-Kufa to Basra over 20 times to refute those people who were spreading the bad belief about Islam. And the distance is a 4-day journey, and there was no cars and airplanes in that time. That was the 2nd century Hijrah. But Imam Abu Hanifa used to go and travel to spread the truth. And they questioned Imam Abu Hanifa, why are you going in details about these issues when the Tabi'een and the Sahaba, they didn't go into these details? And Imam Abu Hanifa, he gave them a similitude, an analogy, which was extremely important. He said, they were a people who had no enemies facing them, so they didn't need to bring out their weapons. We are a people who are confronted with our enemy, so we need to display our weapons. In other words, the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum didn't have al-Mushabbiha and al-Mujassima and al-Mu'tazila and al-Qadariyah and al-Murjiyah, all these deviant groups that Imam al-Tahawi mentioned at the end of his creed, at the end of his Aqidah, his text of Aqidah. The Sahaba weren't confronted with them. But Imam Abu Hanifa, who lived during the time of the Tabi'een, they were confronted with these groups, so therefore they had to supply answers. So just like the time of the great Imams who were confronted with people of deviance, we may not have the same exact deviant people, but we have people with deviant creed in our time, and it is an obligation for us to face those enemies and explain the truth of Islam away from the deviant creed. So when someone's talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that is not befitting, it is an obligation of the people of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah to clarify that. It is an obligation. And as Imam Ahmad radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, who died in the year 241 after Hijrah, he said, if the scholar remains silent in the face of falsehood, how would one ever know the truth? Or how would the truth ever manifest itself? If the scholar in the face of falsehood, deviant creed, deviant belief, deviant practice, if the scholar remains silent, how will the truth ever manifest itself? How are you going to know? How are you going to know? Because they asked Imam Ahmad, and he was in the prison during the fitna of the Mu'tazila, when they were trying to get people to say that the Quran was created. And some people, they got out of it in different ways. And they said, Imam Ahmad, why don't you just be quiet? Why don't you just, say something to get out of it? He said, absolutely not. If the scholar remains silent in the face of falsehood, the truth will never manifest itself. And he was whipped, and he was put in jail, and he was tortured to spread the knowledge. And our teacher, he said, well, the sheikh of my teachers, he said, and when I say the sheikh of my teachers, even if I didn't directly take from him, because I took to him through my teachers, he is our sheikh as well. As the great scholar says, the sheikh of your sheikh is your sheikh. MashaAllah. So that's how we look at everyone in our chain of narration. They are our shuyukh. They are our fathers in deen. And we relate to them, even if we relate to them through an intermediary, they are our teachers. So he said, are you not shy? Are you not shy before Allah? Are you not shy before Allah? While the people of innovation have so much energy in spreading their innovation, and the people of truth are so lazy in spreading the truth. Subhanallah. That was like, to me, when my teacher told me that, that was like golden advice. He said that his sheikh said, are you not shy before Allah? Do you not have any shyness? Are you not shy before Allah? That the people of innovation, Ahlul Bid'ah, they are eager and energetic in spreading their innovation, publishing their books, producing their tapes, making things online, and doing interviews and lectures and spreading all over the world. And they're energetic in doing that. And the people of truth are so lazy with the truth, not conveying to the people. And the evidence, many of you, these things, because you mentioned it, this is your first time hearing some of these matters, which tells you that we're being lazy. The majority of the Muslims in the whole world, historically and globally, believe what I'm talking about, and it's still something new to us. That means we haven't been diligent. That means we haven't been energetic. For someone to be a Muslim and not know that Allah exists without a place, that Allah is not attributed with organs and limbs, and Allah doesn't have hands and a face and feet and move. You don't know that. The only reason you don't know that, because the people of truth have been lazy in conveying the truth. Because we should be giving da'wah. We should be spreading the knowledge, especially the knowledge of the creed. The Prophet ﷺ spent, from the time Allah revealed the Quran to him to the time he died, his whole life was spreading the correct belief of Islam. Some people, they're under the mistake that the Prophet only taught Tawheed for the first 13 years in Mecca. The Prophet taught Tawheed his whole mission. His whole mission was calling the people to the oneness of Allah. From the time he received the first revelation till he died. That's what the Prophet ﷺ taught. The only difference was in Mecca, he didn't teach the ahkam as much, because most of the ahkam, the rules of the religion, were revealed to him in Al-Madinah. Now, go ahead. Oh, so Imam Al-Haddad says, that's not the way you get ma'rifah, not through learning the science of Aqidah. How do you get ma'rifah? Imam Al-Haddad, he said, you must travel the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is that path of traveling? At-tariq ilallah, the path to Allah. It is sticking to a taqwa, outwardly and inwardly. Sticking to a taqwa, having piety. And the scholars, they explain a taqwa as having sound faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, acting according to the book and the sunnah, being content with little, and preparing for your journey to Allah. 4 things. They said a taqwa is having faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-imanu bil-jalil, working, acting according to the book and the sunnah, al-amalu bil-tanzil, being content with little, al-qana'atu bil-qalil, and preparing for your journey to Allah, al-istidad li-yawmi rahil. That's a taqwa. So you need to have that inwardly and outwardly. Then the second things, he said, to ponder on the verses of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet, to have a tadabbur, to reflect and ponder on what Allah is saying in the Quran and in the hadith of the Prophet, as Allah said in the Quran, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Do they not ponder on the Quran, or are their hearts locked? So pondering on the Quran and the hadith, and looking at the dominions of the heavens and the earth, to take an example for them, to realize that there is a creator that we must obey and worship when we look at the dominion of the heavens and the earth, and to refine the characteristics of ourselves, to refine our akhlaq, to have that great characteristics like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as Allah said about him, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You have the most high standard of character. And struggling and working on yourself with gentleness, polishing, cleaning your heart. And how do you do that? By a lot of dhikr, a lot of reflection, and stay away from everything that's going to distract you from this affair. Now, go ahead.
This is the way to attain, and if you tread it, you will, by Allah's will, find what you are seeking.
Here, this is the way you do it. He gave you the route. And if you make mujahada, you will have mushahada. If you keep doing that, you're going to get your objective. Like all of those great Imams, like Imam Al-Haddad himself, because Imam Al-Haddad, he reached these things and he was under 30 years old. By the time he was 27 years old, he was a spiritual master in following this way. Now,
Sufis have struggled against their souls, disciplined them, and weaned them off their habits and familiar things, because they knew that on this depends the fullness of gnosis, and on the fullness of gnosis depends the realization of the station of servitude, ubudiyah, which is the aim of the Gnostics and the hope of those who realize. May Allah be pleased with them all.
You notice Imam Al-Haddad, he gave us an indication from the beginning. He's talking about the section Al-Aqidah and talking about the science of Al-Iman. And he mentions where we must learn qualified scholarship. He mentioned books. And then he mentioned traveling the path to Allah. Al-Aqidah is to lead you to practice, which leads you to a station of spiritual experience, to perfection in your worship, to the status of ubudiyah, and that leads you to al-ma'rifah, to knowing Allah Ta'ala. That is the travel of Iman, Islam, and Ihsan that is mentioned in the hadith of Jibreel. So as he mentions the Ash'ariyah, and his practice was the way of the Shafi'iyah, and then he told you that the path to Allah is the path of the Sufiyah. So here, Imam Al-Haddad, in this small section, gave us an indication of our whole journey to Allah Ta'ala, and Allah knows best. Inshallah. I'm sorry. So, inshallah, we'll today, let me remind you, Allah, I'm sorry. Today, how long was I muted? Did I finish? Okay. Is the voice clear? Yes. I was muted. I got sound now. So put up those 2 flyers for today and the last flyer for tomorrow. Inshallah ta'ala, let me take a few of your questions. I'm sorry. I accidentally hit the mute button. I remind you, I'm only going to take questions that relate to what I'm talking about. So if there's other questions, you can send them to me. And if I can answer them, I will. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sallam. There's no questions. Can you give an example of how the Wahhabi creed is incapable or problematic when dealing with Christians, atheists, etc., or polemics? Number one, the Wahhabi creed is a creed of a tajsim wa tashbih. It is a creed of attributing to Allah bodily attributes, either by wording or meaning, and giving them similitude for the creation. So if you're talking to Christians and others, and your creed is similar to those, there is no way that that creed is going to be able to establish a proof against someone who you have a belief that is similar to, because the creed of the Wahhabis is the creed of the Christians and the Jews in the same meaning, even if they use different words, but the meaning, the end result is the same, which describes Allah with attributes of the creation. Wal-iyadhu billah. Okay, so today, for those who are available, there is the Black Imams Roundtable at 11 o'clock with two of our young African-American seekers of knowledge and very educated and academically and Islamically, Sister Fatima Knight and Sister Nuruddin Knight. And we're going to be discussing issues that concern Black Muslim women. And it's going to be a very interesting conversation, talking about gender issues, female leadership, the role of women in Islam. They have some aspect of interracial marriage they want to talk about. So it's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward, inshallah, for those who have time. It will be today at 11 o'clock in the morning, not our normal time, but it will be a special episode in the morning that will be on Masjid Muhammad's Facebook page, as well as our YouTube page and our website. And tonight at 9 o'clock, so that's 11 o'clock in the morning, tonight we're going to have another night edition of the Black Imams Roundtable, which will be tonight at 9 o'clock with Imam Dawood Walid and Sheikh Aisha Prime. And we're going to be talking about gender issues in Islam, gender equality, and the Black Lives Matter movement and the situation with racial discrimination and white supremacy in this time. So that should be another interesting conversation that we're going to have tonight. And tomorrow night, I'm just giving all of the events. Tomorrow night, we will have a discussion of what does it really mean to study traditional Islam? And we will have two of our great African-American scholars in Shuyukh, Sheikh Abdul Karim Yahya and Sheikh Hamza Abdul Malik. Both of those are teachers who studied abroad, received authorization in the Sanid. Sheikh Abdul Karim, he studied in Syria and in Hadramaut Valley in Yemen, the land where Imam Al-Haddad, and he is among the main translators of Al-Habib Umar bin Hafid. Sheikh Hamza, he studied in Syria, he studied in Yemen, in Hadramaut with the Habaib, and he graduated from Al-Azhar University in Egypt. So it will be a beautiful discussion by those who traveled the path from the inner cities of North America abroad to the Islamic world, achieved great success in studying, and have returned back to establish institutions of learning and conveying to our people for future generations. So that will be a great discussion tomorrow night. Lastly, I think it was two more questions that came up. Oh, and Friday night after that, we will have the, no, that's 7 o'clock. The other one, the flyer said 9. It's at 7. Or was I looking at something? The flyer for Sheikh Abdul Karim Yahya? Oh, 7 o'clock. I'm sorry, my eyes. And after the session with Sheikh Abdul Karim Yahya and Sheikh Hamza, we'll have our weekly reading circle, starting with the book, The Encompassing Epistle Ar-Risalatul Jamia by Imam Ahmad bin Zayn al-Habashi. For the people with knowledge, for the people with knowledge who shy away from defending the proper creed due to one reason or another, would you say it is a problem of lack of reliance on Allah? I won't say reliance. Sheikh Samir, he say thiqatu billah, having confidence in Allah. Not necessarily relying on Allah, because that relates to risk. And it could have that, but when you have a thiqa billah, when you have confidence in Allah, then this won't be, that will help you in that. So I think the person who has the knowledge and doesn't defend the creed of Ahl Sunnah or explain, I don't mean argue, I mean clarify the creed of Ahl Sunnah, that person needs to work on their confidence in Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Yes, Imam Al-Haddad, he has his own creed, Aqidatul Islam, and I'm going to read that creed with you. Maybe sometimes, maybe we can have just a reading one night and just read the creed and with very brief commentary, inshallah. Yeah, he has a book called Aqidatul Islam. It was written by Imam Al-Haddad. Inshallah, we'll come back to the other question about the speech of Allah, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullahu khaira. Inshallah, please share those flyers so that people would be aware of the events. And inshallah, we hope to see you at the round table or tomorrow morning. Jazakumullahu khaira. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.